Ladies and gentlemen, I bring to you the real Star Wars Battlefront 3, and I am very, very tired. I am running on about 4 hours of sleep right now because I decided to play through the campaign of Battlefront 3 from Free Radical that was unfortunately canceled back in 2008. And you might be asking, well, Bill, why are you even making a video about this in sleep deprivation? Well, it's because you guys gave me my best video of all time about a few days ago titled Star Wars Battlefront 3 is Here. And it was about EA's Battlefront 2 from 2017 that's going to have online support via servers because of Kyber v2. That's going to feature online play with mods, modded maps, new maps, old maps, all of the sort. And it's going to be a very exciting year for Star Wars fans when this officially rolls out. But a lot of those comments were very disappointed to see that I wasn't playing Free Radical's Battlefront 3. Some of them even felt slighted. So what I decided to do, because I'm a man of my word, I took it upon myself to actually download the Wii leaked version of Free Radical's Battlefront 3 from 2008. And just to give you a brief summary, this game was canceled back in 2008, and there's just been constant footage, constant leaks of cinematics and things of that sort. And it's essentially the what could have been for Star Wars fans. It is a game that features space-to-ground combat, large-scale battles, lightsaber combat, infantry gameplay, and a very amazing story. And if you do want to play this and not actually download the Wii version, there's a port called Star Wars Elite Squadron on the PSP that does actually tell this story pretty well. But again, people wanted the full Battlefront 3 from Free Radical on a console. And this is the best possible build that you can get your hands on to play through the campaign from start to finish. Now, first and foremost, I got to give a shout out to Free Radical Archives, okay? They are the ones that dedicated their own money and time to release this build of the game. Without them, I would not have been able to experience this, and boy, did I experience it. And if you want a more in-depth review about the campaign itself, I highly recommend watching Flandrew's video about it. I'll leave the link to that video in the description. It is a very well-made and articulated video about everything regarding the campaign from beginning to the end. But this is not the video for that. This is kind of just giving you my raw review about this build and everything encompassing it. The good, the bad, the ugly, right? So, before we get into the rest of the video, drop a like, subscribe. We got about 100 subscribers, which is utterly insane on the previous video, and I know you guys will not let me down here. Now, with that being said, let's get into it. This game is probably the best campaign I've ever experienced in terms of its story regarding anything Star Wars. This is the tell-all, this is the best possible tie-in video game to the entire Star Wars saga. Well, excluding Disney, of course. This is just the best possible tie-in game. You have the Clone Wars, you have Order 66, you have the original trilogy, you have the expanded universe, the EU, and everything about this story makes me love Star Wars at the end of the day. Now, the campaign of itself has a lot of space-to-ground missions. In fact, every single mission that you play is got some form of space to ground. You're either going up into the ship to blow it up from the planet, or vice versa, you're going from the ship and blowing that up and then going down to the planet to support the infantry units. Now, there's a lot of love about the characters, of course. You have Han Solo, you got Luke, you got Leia, you have Darth Vader.
Do not disappoint me.
You have a lot of these different characters that we've all come to love throughout the Star Wars saga. And what's really cool is that this is a tie-in because you are actually a clone and your brother is also a clone, and you're actually cloned from a Jedi. You're not your traditional clone troopers. You actually have Force capabilities because you were cloned by a Jedi. So I'm not going to spoil the rest of the story, but it is very, very enjoyable. And everything about it is just fantastic. 10 out of 10 for the story. Now, if we get into the gameplay, Boy, oh boy, I could talk about this for 30 minutes. Alright, so let's talk about my experience with the playthrough. The first warning sign for me going through this campaign for this Wii version of the game was through the tutorial. I was trying to heal up a speeder bike. I healed it up all the way, and then I could not progress through the rest of the tutorial because it thought that the speeder bike was not fully healed. This wasn't the end of the world because you're able to just start the first mission, which is exactly what I did. And I eventually got through that first mission, and it was enjoyable to actually see me fighting alongside clones through the Clone Wars and also fighting with a Jedi. And this was really cool. This whole, experience of going from space to ground was great for me. Then, as I progressed through certain missions, you eventually land on Dantooine. Now, I'm giving you this warning if you're going to play through this campaign. Dantooine, I experienced about 10 crashes through this mission alone. I spent about 2.5 to 3 hours, not even joking here, trying to get through this mission. And I just could not progress through because one of the allies was not going through their dialogue properly to get to the next portion of the map. I experienced so many crashes here, I was ready to call it quits. It was extremely frustrating. But thank you, Free Radical Archives on the Discord server. They were able to get me through this mission, okay? So I eventually got through Dantooine, and then from there on out, I experienced probably a crash or a severe bug on every mission after that. When I was on Hoth, I was running away from Vader, and I could not get through to the next portion of the mission because Darth Vader was choking me through a wall. So I could not progress to the next objective. So what did I need to do? I needed to activate the debug menu to activate the next objective, okay? And I did not want to do that. I wanted to run away from Vader like they wanted me to in the campaign, and I unfortunately just couldn't do it. I spent about 20 runs trying to run away from Vader, and every single time he choked me out. And what really is unfortunate is I had to run the debug menu not only here, but pretty much on every mission after that in one way or another to actually complete this campaign. It was extremely frustrating, and I don't know if a lot of YouTubers are even going to talk about the frustrating points of the campaign because it's a beloved Battlefront 3 game that we all wanted, right? But I eventually got through Vader, and then I go through Hoth, and I finish that mission by basically just doing next objective through the debug menu. And if you're wondering, the debug menu is essentially exactly what it is, right? It's supposed to debug the bugs in the game. So I was able to get to the next mission, and like I said before, I experienced the bug pretty much every single mission after that, right? So I'm progressing through, and I eventually have a lightsaber. Again, I'm not trying to spoil too much of the story if you're wondering, but you eventually get a lightsaber. And you get this lightsaber primarily on Bespin in the third act. Now, this was infuriating. This whole aspect of this lightsaber combat was extremely just a letdown for me. The hitboxes were so utterly small that I needed to essentially do a jump slam down attack move to defeat my enemies because the lightsaber hitbox was so utterly small to defeat your enemies, it was almost unplayable. I had to resort to my blaster a few times. I had to resort on using the repulse force power multiple times, but primarily to defeat my enemies with the lightsaber, I had to slam on the ground to defeat them, which just was a huge letdown for me. And at this point, I was in the third act. I said, I have to see this campaign through for you guys, for the fans. So I'm playing through, I'm doing the slam attack constantly throughout variety portions of the entire campaign. Then I get to probably the second to last mission, which is Dathomir. So I'm defeating, some TIE fighters on the space portion of Dathomir, and then I decide to fly down. I'm flying down, and I decide to hit the land button, because, of course, that's what it's supposed to do. You're supposed to land on the planet, and I literally crashed. My ship crashed. I didn't crash the game in that portion of the mission, but I just kept repeatedly crashing on the floor. So then I said, okay, let me just bail out when I'm close to the ground. That got me through that portion, okay? I'm using my lightsaber, slam attacking constantly to get through the enemies, and then I get to where they are exposing X2's plan, his evil plan to clone Jedi, right? So I'm getting there, and I experienced a crash just in the mission, and then I had to restart the mission from the beginning. And I had to do that on a lot of other missions. If you experience a crash at any point in a mission on this build of the game, you are going to have to restart the mission from the beginning, which is why I spent about 8 or 9 hours playing through this campaign, because inevitably what ends up happening is if you do crash the game and you decide to load the last checkpoint, it's going to crash at that exact point again, repeatedly over and over and over. And the only way to get through the mission is to restart it from the beginning. This is a constant bug that made me not want to finish the entire campaign. But I said, you know what? I'm seeing it through. I'm persistent. So I get to Mustafar, right? I get through Dathomir. I had some floor clipping and things like that trying to defeat the Night Sisters, which was already a pain. I had to, again, reload last checkpoint repeatedly to not floor clip and go through the map. And I eventually got through that mission. The last mission is Mustafar, the grand finale, right? And you are, I'm not going to spoil too much, but you're trying to defeat your brother. That's what the goal of this portion of this mission is. So you get to Mustafar, you blow up some ship, you go down to the planet just like a lot of the other missions have, and it was cool to land on Mustafar, but once I landed and had my lightsaber out, my health bar just depleted as if I were in lava. Like just, I would instantly die when I was on the map. So, again, like always, I had to run the debug menu, put on God mode to get through the final mission of the game, which made me I was just at this point, I was at my wit's end. I gotta be real with you guys. I was not enjoying this playthrough at all. I had God mode on, doing the Force Slam repeatedly to the Stormtroopers, and then I finally get to X2. I get to X2, he's got his Stormtroopers, he's throwing clone containers at me, and the map on this portion of the mission is very weird. I am on a platform, but then some of the Stormtroopers are in this smoky, cloudy area, and you don't have a really good mini-map, so you are essentially going in blind because there's so much smoke on the ground, and you have to defeat the Stormtroopers before you can even get to X2. This mission alone took me about an hour and a half to go through, and I could not even progress to fight X2 myself. I was defeating the Stormtroopers time and time again, force slamming to the ground, and then I literally went through the map to make sure that all the Stormtroopers were defeated to make sure that I can progress to the next portion of the mission, because that's how this game operates. You need to defeat the enemies before you can get to the next portion of the objective. So I made sure I went through the entire portion of this map, defeated all the enemies, went through the smoke repeatedly, tried to go up to X2, he force pushed me. I could not even get close to him because the game thought that I did not complete the objective. I needed to fight X2, but it thought maybe there were some Stormtroopers around, there were none around, and I just could not end up fighting X2 myself. So what did I need to do? Well, I hit next objective, and then a cutscene rolls, which I could not see. You can't see most of the cutscenes while you're playing through the campaign, which is awesome. And then the game ended. That's literally it. Now, this may seem like a negative, super negative take on the playthrough, but, keep in mind, I spent about 9 hours going through this, repeatedly going through bugs and crashes, and at this point, I could not even fight the final boss in this build. And the only way you can even see the final cutscene is if you go to the main menu, go to Progress, go to Cinematics, and then literally hit play on the cinematic. And that's the only way you can see most of the cinematics in this game, which kind of pulled me away from the escape that this campaign and story had to offer. So I, obviously wanted to see the ending. I saw the ending, and I felt like empty. I felt so empty inside because I was running on 4 hours of sleep. I had to wake up this morning to play the final act of the game, and I experienced so many bugs on those last two missions. Now, what does this mean? Well, you can play the campaign. You can play a quote-unquote playable build of this game, but you might have to run the debug menu repeatedly to get through the entirety of the campaign. But what's the silver lining here? Well, A, we did get a version of this game that you can play from start to finish. That's huge, right? Battlefront 3, the canceled version, is the biggest what if. It's the biggest what if for Star Wars fans because of, everything that it entailed. The space to ground, the lightsaber combat, the in-depth story, and the great story it did tell, but it was clouded by bugs for me personally. But again, the silver lining here is that since there's a playable build of this game, the Discord server's been actually popping off for the past week with mods. And my real hope here is that eventually this Wii build of the game can either get ported to an Xbox version with more in-depth textures and things like that, but more importantly, I hope the modders on the Discord server can not only provide better graphics, but also eliminate the bugs and repeated crashes that I experienced in my playthrough. And, at the end of the day, modders are amazing. They are the ones that are honestly keeping a lot of Star Wars games alive, and I would not be surprised if a year from now, this game was playable, no bugs, updated textures, and maybe can give the rest of the Star Wars community what we so much desire, which is a fully fleshed out Battlefront 3. So I wanted to give you guys my take on this whole debacle. For the past 24 hours, been playing this, downloaded it, going through the bugs repeatedly, showing persistence to get to the final act, but unfortunately, this build is still clouded with a ton of bugs. I think honestly, Free Radical would have needed another year to really get this game rolled out, and it's just unfortunate that we could not see this game through Free Radical's eyes. But at the end of the day, we do have modders to make this game playable. So I hope you all did enjoy this video. Don't forget to drop a like, subscribe if you guys are new, comment down below what you think about this game and my take on the build. I know it may seem more negative than a lot of other YouTubers, but I'm giving you my raw thoughts here, the truth around my experience playing through the campaign. I'm your boy Just Bill, and signing off.